And we are live. Welcome to another edition of DT Live. Today's topic, we're going to interpret Ubuntu's desktop metrics. Basically, we're going to take a look at some of the data that Ubuntu has collected from their data collection during the Ubuntu installer. Recently, in Ubuntu 18.04 now, they have this feature that you can opt out of, but by default it's kind of opt-in, where they ask you for certain information about your computer, about your system, about your hardware. And that's going to be today's topic. They released some information about this about a week ago. I haven't really discussed it on the channel. Today I thought this would be a good topic. We may just discuss Ubuntu in general today. Anything Ubuntu related. Ubuntu, of course, is by far the most popular Linux distribution on the desktop. It probably has more users, as far as desktop Linux users, than all other Linux distributions combined, mainline Ubuntu. Certainly, if you include all the Ubuntu flavors, you know, I would imagine up to 80%, maybe 90% of desktop users, it's hard to say, run Ubuntu or some Ubuntu-based distro, if you include things like Mint and Elementary and whatnot. So, I'm going to take a look at the chat. Several of you are already here. It's kind of an impromptu stream today. Let's see who we have in the chat today. Silent Reboot. Woo Hung says it's 7:10 a.m. in Korea. Very cool. Tagfriend says, hello guy, hello dear Derek. Mr. F, he's back. It's 3:25 Pacific Northwest. Looks like a good topic today. I hope so. Donkey says, holy nuts, it's 5:30 a.m. and I'm still not asleep. Well, why are you still up at 5:30 a.m.? You still got time to at least get 1 or 2 hours of sleep before whatever it is you're going to do during the day. My sleeping schedule is effed up. Yes, it is. Mr. F says, LOL. Mine too. No worries. And of course, all this took place before I started streaming all this chat. Donkey says, a man found dead while sitting on his PC from watching live stream. Yeah, that probably happens a lot. Especially these very long gaming streams. You know, I bet people have passed away during some of these marathon gaming live stream sessions that people do. Yep, Mr. F says, sup DT, how you doing? Ben Fitzpatrick is in the house. He says howdy. Alright, he's installing KDE 4.12.5 on Gentoo. Why are you installing KDE 4? Gabe says hi. How you doing, Gabe? Neil, he says hi. Robert says hi. Code 2610 says hi. Ray Lackey is in the house. Lamer is here. Yeah, Ben says, I wouldn't touch Ubuntu with a 10-foot pole. Ansem says, howdy. Mr. F says, LOL. And Terry Love, sleep. What's that? Installing Ubuntu with network installer. Seems nice. Yeah. That's not bad. Steven Anderson says, hi. CO Tech, hello. Ubuntu is evil. I wouldn't call Ubuntu evil. There's a lot worse things out there than Ubuntu. They're asking for information about people's hardware. You know, they're not tracking IPs or asking for, they're not accessing any files on your system, so. Let's see, DT, I bought me a Lenovo ThinkPad T430 with a docking station. Very cool. Babbler says hi. And 4BL says, I am live now? Yes, you are. And did you get Linux Mint 19 stable ISO yet? They're on the mirrors already. No, I did not. That's great. We knew it was any day now because the beta's been out for, you know, a week or two, and usually they're pretty quick behind the beta for the official release. So, if Mint 19 is already, you know, their stable has already been released, I'll probably go ahead and download the ISO tonight. Probably take a look at it sometime tomorrow. Yeah, I would rather run Arch more than I'd run Ubuntu, to be honest. Well, yes. I'm sorry, Derek, but I find Ubuntu just despicable, dude. No, nothing wrong with that. Everybody's opinion is welcome here. Hey, I made this one. Yep. Yeah, you made it. But my mind says buy the ThinkPad X220. Let's see. I don't hate Mint. I just don't like Ubuntu. Hello, Derek, and the chat. That's Deep Stream. How you doing, Deep? Ron Lee says, hey. Alright, quite a few of you here. And, you know, this might be a bit of a juicy topic. So, and again, we may get into a lot about Ubuntu because, you know, I can't really discuss these metrics that much. I mean, it's not that big of a topic. We may discuss anything you guys want to discuss Ubuntu related. I'm pretty familiar with Ubuntu. I've used the Ubuntu LTS in the past on a number of different machines. Played around a little bit with Ubuntu server. Let's see. DT, do you think Ubuntu would be okay for someone who cares about privacy? Sure. And there's really no Linux distro that I would say doesn't respect people's privacy. I know somebody's going to start talking about Deepin here in a minute because of that Quids Up video. But even Deepin, I know it's Chinese. Deepin and Rosa because it's Russian, a Russian Linux distro, really get a lot of flack because of their country of origin. I don't know why. It's all open source. You can look at the code. If it's doing anything fishy, you'll find it. Yeah, Deepin, they had some web analytics in their software center. But their software center is web-based, basically. I mean, it pulls stuff down from the web. So that's why that stuff was there. They weren't really doing anything out of the ordinary there. It was way overblown. It was mainly clickbait title. So I have no problems running things like Deepin or Rosa. I certainly don't have a problem with Ubuntu. Let's see. Does this include the Ubuntu variants like Ubuntu or Ubuntu Mate? The metrics? I don't believe they asked for that information. Some of them did. I believe Ubuntu Mate did. I remember that one. Maybe all of them did. All the official ones. Pretty sure Mate did. I remember that one. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, so does try MX, says Lamer. MX Linux. It's very cool. But there's no 32-bit. But it will not install with the 32-bit UEFI, says, okay. AJ. Paul says, hey, DT, how you doing, Paul? Glad you could catch it. Yep, Ron Lee. Ubuntu is collecting. Okay, so it's probably the official flavors. I thought Mate did, and Ron Lee says Ubuntu does, too. Yeah. Now, of course, this is mainly for the main Ubuntu editions, like Ubuntu spin-offs that have nothing to do with canonical, like community distros like Mint or Elementary. They're not collecting this information. Because this is information for canonical. So it's, just the canonical backed projects. Yeah, PC Linux OS and React OS are both Russian distros. I did not know that. I actually didn't know that about React OS. I haven't taken a look at React OS on the channel. I've used it before in the past. I've checked it out. React OS has been around forever, but I need to take a look at it on the channel one day. Alright, so I'm going to get into the heart of the matter here. So, a few days ago, Ubuntu, as promised, when they did this opt-in in the installer, or it's actually opt-out. So let me explain what happens. When you install Ubuntu now, you go through the standard Ubuntu installer, and it asks you, would you like to let Ubuntu know a little more information about your system hardware? They want to know what CPU you're running, what GPU you're running, your screen resolution, everything that you tick on in the installer. They want to know, do you update during the installer? Do you install the third-party codecs? Are you going to do the minimal install? Or are you going to do the full install? Those sorts of things. And by default, it is ticked on, this question. There's a yes or no. It's ticked on by default. You can tick it off. A lot of people have a problem with that. I have a little bit of a problem with that. I would rather it be opt out, the reason Ubuntu claims it's not an opt out is because if it was turned off by default, very few people probably would turn it on because most people go with the default. Makes sense, and I understand that, but I have a solution to this problem. What I would like is yes or no, nothing is ticked on, and you cannot get to the next part of the installation without choosing yes or no. I think that makes sense. I think if they just had a page, hey, here's the information we want, what do you say, yes or no? And you cannot proceed in the installation until you choose one, yes or no. I think that would solve a lot of this problem. I think very few people would have an issue with this if they had done that. Or go the opt-out route, but again, Ubuntu, probably rightfully so, says not too many people would probably choose to opt in because most people go with the defaults. But, you know, I don't know. It's a tough situation, I guess. But a lot of people are put off when they have to opt out of something, including me. So, alright, so looking at the first look here at desktop metrics, this was posted on June 22nd by Will Cook. So, we first announced our intention to ask users to provide basic, not personally identifiable system data back in February. So this is nothing that can identify you. So the big thing everybody asks is it getting location? Is it tracking an IP? I think it does get information as far as country of origin, as far as, you know, like your keyboard layout, but they are not tracking any kind of IPs. They really have no idea where you're at within, you know, hundreds of miles. So they're not really tracking location at all. Obviously, no sensitive information like your username and all that. For those of you that enter real names for that kind of thing, I don't like to put information like that in the installer. Since then, we've built the Ubuntu report tool and integrated it into the Ubuntu 18.04 LTS initial setup. And here's a little screenshot. Let me see if I can. Alright, would you like to send this information? Alright, so it says Ubuntu can report information that helps developers improve it. This includes things like computer model, software installed, and the approximate location you choose, such as Europe, London. So that it gets your time zone settings, and that's it. So nothing past that as far as pinpointing a location. Would you like to send this information? By default, it's ticked on to yes, send system info to Canonical, but you can choose no, don't send system info. And again, I think a better option there would be not to have anything selected and force somebody to actually read that paragraph and make an informed decision, yes or no. Is what I would like to see. Anyway, so let's go ahead and jump to the stats. The opt-in rate, 67%. That is pretty high. Again, Ubuntu assumes that most people are probably just going to stick with whatever is turned on by default. If it had been no by default, probably the opt-out rate would have been very high. So this has held steady since the release and has actually started to increase in recent weeks. So it's holding pretty strong at 67% opt-in, and they say it's even starting to increase a little bit. So people have gotten a little more comfortable opting in. Probably now that they're releasing some of this info and people are seeing the info that's being released to, that it's nothing really scary, probably this number will tick up a little more in the future. So 67% of the installers opt in. The average install, now this is interesting, the average install time for Ubuntu desktop takes 18 minutes. There you go. How many non-Linux operating systems install in 18 minutes or less? Not many. And this is the average time, 18 minutes. So you've got some machines, some very powerful machines, that install Ubuntu, and it tells you here, in less than 8 minutes. There are machines out there that get a full Ubuntu up and running in under 8 minutes. And my machine, which is not, you know, the beefiest machine, but it does okay. It's not unusual for me to install Ubuntu in about 10 or 12 minutes on my hardware. So very, very fast install times. Fresh installs versus upgrades. Now this is really interesting too. So the number of people upgrading an existing Ubuntu installation is about a quarter of those who are installing 1804 from scratch, which, given that we only start prompting for upgrades when the .1 release is out, which the end of July is when that is scheduled, this is not surprising. So only a very small people that installed 1804 did so using the upgrade path. The reason is most users have not been offered that upgrade yet. If you're running 1604, you will not be offered the 1804 upgrade inside Ubuntu until the 1804.1 release at the end of July. So that is why not too many people have upgraded to 1804. Most of the 1804 installations are from scratch, meaning nuke and pave. Another interesting fact is that the newly introduced minimum install is being used a little over 15% by our users. Well, you know, I thought more people would opt in for that, actually. So the minimal install, only 15% of users are using that. I wonder if that is a big enough percentage for Ubuntu to really worry about in the future, because that's not that many people that are choosing to do that minimum install, in my opinion. The article here mentions this is a brand new option, but it is already attracting a considerable fan base. So apparently William Cook thinks that that 15% number is a considerable fan base. I don't know. Let's see. Other installer options show that nearly everyone chooses to download software updates during installation. So pretty much everybody ticks that. Do you want to update while you do the install? Pretty much everybody's ticking that on. Over half the installs also include the restricted add-ons, such as the proprietary multimedia codecs and Wi-Fi drivers and everything. So over half choose that. That's not surprising. In fact, when I do my Ubuntu installs and Ubuntu-based installs, you know, I always tell you guys, you really should tick that on. If you want a proper desktop experience, you're gonna need the proprietary video drivers, Wi-Fi drivers, media codecs, all that stuff. Excuse me. Got my coffee. 28% of users select auto login. That is insane to me. 28% of you, nearly a third of you that install Ubuntu, are auto logging in rather than asking Ubuntu to require a password. I cannot believe that many people are so not concerned with their privacy that they auto log in. And in the chat, by the way, Horace, the super chat, thank you, buddy. I really appreciate that. If you got a question for me, anything you want answered, go ahead and post it. I'll get to it in just a second. Let me finish my little rant here. 28% of you choose auto login. Why? The only thing I can think of that, and Lamer in the chat is mentioning it, it's probably VMs. I hope that all of you people are running VMs if you are auto logging in. Even if you live alone and you think you're the only one that will ever access your machine, you're not home all the time. What if somebody breaks into your house, steals that laptop or that desktop? Well, with auto login, I mean, they've got access to everything. They've got, you know, if you've got desktop emails such as Thunderbird, you know, things that are actually stored on your hard drive, guess what? They've got all your information for everything. So you guys really, again, if this is not a VM, if some of you are actually doing this on real hardware, go ahead and turn on require a password. It takes half a second to enter a password into your computer. Trust me, it may save you a lot of heartache down the road. If you ever, you know, have a laptop stolen out of your house or out of your car, or, you know, whatever, you know, lock that thing down a little bit tighter. So, all right, so I'm gonna come back to the rest of this here in just a second. I have missed a ton of chat, and I apologize. Again, thank you, Horace, for that super chat. I really appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, if you got anything, yeah, Horace, no questions, just supporting the channel. Thank you, sir. Every little bit helps. I've been trying to buy a little more equipment for the channel, put a little more money into this, and I really appreciate all you guys that contribute. Let me see if I can catch up on some of the chat. there's no way I'm going to catch up on all of it. But yeah, so Donkey, going back to ReactOS, ReactOS is based on Unix. I was not aware of that. Let's see. So it's more like using Windows NT. ReactOS, okay. And I'll take a look at ReactOS on the channel at some point. Let's see. Is DT having a touch of the Toms? Does he use Comcast too? Was there some buffering? If so, yes, I use Comcast. It's not the greatest. Oh, Comcast. What the F is Tom on? Dope. Yeah, that's awful. KDE is too heavy, yeah. I'm not a big KDE fan myself. Well, you guys know that. You know I like minimal. Let's see. Yes, I don't have Comcast where I live, so it's lamer. Comcast seems to be everywhere. You know, I really wish there was more competition for things like, you know, cable. There's really not. It's for internet cable. Let's see. Sciotech says, all desktop environments are too heavy in my opinion. Even XFCE is heavier when I would want than I want. I am spoiled by straight up window managers. That's true. Ansem disagrees. KDE is not heavy. On my machine, cold boot, 600 megs. Yeah, that's actually pretty good for KDE Plasma. 4B says LXDE, very lightweight. LXDE is awesome. No one will ever say LXDE is bloated. If they do, they are lying. It's like, yeah, Peter says, hi, Derek. Nothing is wrong with those Ubuntu metrics. They earned our trust for this issue. It can only serve to make it better. I hope so. I really hope they can take some of this and improve on some things, because there are issues we still have in Linux. You know, I would never go back to Windows. You know, Linux is where I'm staying for the rest of my life. But let's be honest, there's a lot of things that need to be improved in Linux on the desktop. Pulse Audio, I'm looking at you. All right. Let's see, you can make your own live version of NixOS. Yeah, I looked at NixOS on the channel, and I went into that thing blind, meaning I knew nothing about it, and my video on it was strange, because I didn't know what I was doing. Boy, that install... I didn't expect that install process. It took me good like 2.5, 3 hours to get that thing up and running. Yeah, Ben says, I'd rather run Mac or Windows than something not KDE4 or XFCE. Oh, okay. Let's see. I can get Arch done in 10 minutes or less. You can get a full Arch, or probably just the base system, in 10 minutes or less. You have got some outstanding hardware, sir. You get that done in 10 minutes. Either that or you've got some scripts that automate some of that for you. Or both. I'm sure you've got a beefy machine, though. Yeah, I don't need the Arch Wiki. Yeah, the Arch Wiki, I mean, the install process for Arch, anyway, is really maybe a dozen steps. If you've done it a few times, you've got it memorized. Peter says, I consider 18 minutes rather long. For the install, 18 minutes is not bad. Have you ever done like a Windows 7 install? 18 minutes is pretty fast for... And again, this is average times. You got to think of all the people that are running on some really old hardware, maybe not great internet connections if they're doing the download updates and proprietary drivers. 18 minutes is good. 18 minutes is really good, in my opinion. So, has anyone here set up PCIe pass-through with KVM, QEMU, and Looking Glass? It might be fun if DistroTube would do that. I've never done that. I've used a little bit of KVM in the past, not recently. Trying to do pass-through with it, I haven't done. Might be something I could look at in the future, though. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I need to do more stuff with VMs as far as, you know, I do a lot of Linux installs and VMs on the channel, but I really don't discuss the VMs as far as the technology behind, you know, things like VirtualBox or, you know, KVM or what have you. GNOME boxes. You guys have asked me to take a look at the GNOME boxes program before, and I haven't. And the reason I haven't is because I don't run GNOME, but I probably should take a look at that particular hypervisor at some point. We got some Linux from scratch talk here. So, I'm that 10% that don't install update while installing Ubuntu. Yeah. If you're not connected to the internet, which some people, won't have a machine that's connected to the internet when they do an Ubuntu install, obviously, you wouldn't want to tick that on if you're not connected. And of course, we got Horace's super chat here. Just caught up with that. Really appreciate that again, Horace. Thank you, sir. And of course, yeah, Lamer's talking about most is probably VMs for the auto login. Yeah, I'm really surprised. 28% auto login. I refuse to believe that 28% of Ubuntu installs are in VMs, though. So there are some people running Ubuntu on physical hardware, and they're choosing to auto login. I think that's a bad move. All right. No one should see my browsing history. No one. Yeah, absolutely not. And Ubuntu's not collecting anything like that. There's no personal data of any kind. They're not accessing your files, your documents or anything. They're not doing any of that. And they were straight up front. Ubuntu was when they did this. They told us exactly the data that they were going to collect, and told us, hey, when we collect it, we're going to put it all on the internet for everybody to see, which they've already released, some of the data. So from what I can tell, Canonical's, been straight up with this. They're not doing anything scandalous. This isn't Windows 10, where Windows 10 basically in the EULA, you agree to let Windows collect whatever they want to know about you. They're not going to tell you exactly what they're collecting, but you have to agree to it. Not only that, you have to pay for Windows. You're actually paying for them to spy on you. Yeah, Randy says, just got home. DT is still on the line. Yep. I'm not sure how long I'm going to stream here. It's kind of an impromptu stream, but I thought it was an interesting topic. Let's see. Do you even have 32 megabytes of RAM? I'm not sure who you're asking that, Donkey. If you're asking me, I've got 16 on my main production machine. 16 is fine for what I do. 16 is enough where I can do what I need to do on my host machine and have 1 or even 2 VMs running. Give them 4 gigs of RAM each. I would like to bump it up to 32 megs of RAM. RAM is not cheap, though, these days because of all the crypto miners, and video cards have gotten outrageous, and RAM prices have gotten outrageous. But I would like to bump this machine up to 32 megs of RAM at some point, just so I can do more VMs. I can run more at a time too, because sometimes I have like 2 or 3 VM installs I want to do in a day, and it would be nice if I could just open up 3 VMs at a time and do 3 installs, all at the same time. That would be awesome. Let's see. You won't see me run a straight up window manager. Never, never, ever. Yeah, don't ever say never, Ben. You'd be surprised. Somebody, I guess, took exception with my talk about Pulse Audio. Pulse Audio is a lot better than it used to be, for sure. Yes, Pulse Audio used to be complete garbage. Now it's slightly better than complete garbage. So, and Donkey, Pulse Audio and ALSA is fine. No, they're really not. If you do a lot of multimedia stuff, if you do stuff like I do, and you do a lot of stuff with things like OBS and Discord and Zoom and whatever, Hangouts, Pulse Audio can give you some real headaches. It tends to break a lot, especially on updates. Configs get messed up. Anybody that's seen some of my streams knows Pulse Audio has some issues. Because I've had some streams before where I've fought for half an hour to get audio up and running. Yeah, Horace says, have a nice night, DT. Back to C++ for me. Hit that thumbs up, guys. Appreciate that, Horace. Back to C++. You would rather be programming right now than watching this stream? Horace, you're either a strange guy or I am very boring. One of the two. Or a combination of both. Alan Rocco, Windows updates are slow as F. Yeah. You know what? I don't know about Windows 10. I remember, you know, the last version of Windows I ran was XP. I don't remember much about that. The Windows 7 updates, from what I've heard, were pretty horrible. You guys that complain about Windows 10 updates usually complain that they're long and that they reboot your machine. Sometimes more than once. And you don't get to decide when to update. It just automatically starts updating whenever it wants. That, to me, is unacceptable. I would never run an operating system that treated me like that, to be honest. Like if I'm doing some critical work and all of a sudden the machine told me it's going to update, and it's going to update now, and it might even reboot the machine after it updates, no. Let's see. Yeah, I still use Windows because I'm a gamer. That's Ben. Yeah, Windows into your privacy. That's a good one there. Present Arm says he did 4 in 8 gigs of RAM. So you did 4 VMs. You probably gave them each 1 gig of RAM. Which we're going to get into some of this as far as VMs, because there's some metrics here that really do point to people, a lot of people probably using VMs. Dan Snickles says, "What's up, DT?" Good to see you, Dan. Yep. And I'm going to have to skip ahead here a little bit. Alright, so let's get back to the metrics that I left out on. So 28% of you were using auto login. Alright. CPU. A single CPU is the most common. Yeah, that's not surprising. How many people are using dual CPUs? Not. Well, you can see. Here's the single CPUs, and that really small graph is the 2 CPU users. Disk partition schemes. Okay, now this is interesting. I actually expected this to be a little different. Slightly more than 50% choose erase device and install Ubuntu. So they give the entire hard drive to Ubuntu and let Ubuntu do its automatic partitioning. I would think most users probably do that, but just barely over half, 53%, choose that option. A sizable number of you, 21.89%, manually partition your drive. 8% of you choose the install alongside option, which means 8% of people that install Ubuntu are dual booting. That's kind of a high number too. I mean, we know a lot of people have to run Windows, but yeah, 8% of people that run Ubuntu are running some other operating system. Not all that 8% is running Windows, but probably most are. Erase existing and reinstall is also at 8%. LVM is at 4.26%, and encrypted LVM is at 3.65%. That's actually, I mean, between the two LVMs, LVM and encrypted LVM, that's almost 8% of users. So that's higher than I would have thought, too. Those are interesting numbers, the disk partitioning scheme. I don't know. What do you guys think? Some of that's a little surprising to me. And I'll get back to the chat and see if you guys have anything to say on that, and then we'll discuss display and RAM. Let's see, it doesn't count the cores. Yeah, for the CPU, yeah, that's not cores. That is, are you running a single CPU, or are you running like a dual, like a Xeon, you know, something like that. So, yeah, almost everybody runs a single CPU. So, let's see. David says, "Sorry, I'm new. Did I say anything funny?" You were talking about Windows RAM usage being ridiculous. I'm not a Windows user anymore. I don't know. Is Windows 10 very high on RAM usage? I'm sure it's higher than probably most Linux distributions. Let's see. Yeah, Paul, you always manually partition? Even if you're giving Ubuntu the whole disk, you run through the manual partition, or are you dual booting? Yeah, using 32 CPU with 128 gigs of RAM. Donkey, you win the internet, sir. 128 gigs of RAM in your machine. How much did 128 gigs of RAM cost? Yeah. I'm one of those nuke and install folks, says Rex. Yeah. I never dual boot, so yeah, I always just nuke and pave. Yeah, I have too many games that are exclusive to Windows that just can't be run in Wine. Yeah, Wine sucks. And if you're a serious gamer, you have to have some installation of Windows around. You just have to. Yep. Let's see. Yeah, try running FSX in Vista. Nope. Yeah, I don't use Steam, so I can't run Linux. Only, you can't run Linux only. Okay, so you have to dual boot. It's understandable. Yeah, I've seen Windows 10 boot in 160 megs of memory in a VM. I was shocked. That was present arms there. Wow, Windows 10 boots and only 160 megs of memory in a VM? Yeah, but how long did it take? I mean, did it take all day for it to boot? I don't know. That's crazy. I would have never thought Windows. I don't think of Windows and lightweight in the same sentence. Yeah, Ben says 128 gigs. Holy smokes. That's a lot of RAM. That is a lot of RAM. I mean, you could have a couple of dozen VMs running at the same time with 128 gigs of RAM and give them all plenty of resources. Well, no. I mean, you need good CPU, but you said you had a 32 probably core CPU or 32 processes. Yeah. You can do a lot of virtualization with that machine, sir. Yeah, DT, what do you think about Mac OS as a whole? The updates aren't as intrusive as Windows. I haven't used Mac OS in like 2 decades. When I was in college back in the 90s, I had to use Mac a little bit, some old Macintosh computers, but never owned a machine personally, never bought a Mac personally, just on principle. Even before I gave up Windows, you know, I knew I would never use an Apple product. But they may be great machines. I don't know. Again, I never owned one. I doubt I ever will. So, and as far, I mean, they may be good hardware, but I don't know why I would run the Mac operating system, you know, if I have Linux available to me. I'm not sure that the Mac OS would offer anything to me that Linux doesn't offer in a better way. Maybe some different software options. But that kind of goes both ways. Yeah, what do you think about Deepin 15.6? I thought it was good. My review of it was mostly positive. I don't like how much CPU it uses, though. Way too much CPU. Alright, so let's see. Display. Let's quickly get through these metrics. Display. A full HD 1080p resolution is the most popular screen resolution, not surprisingly. Most people these days have, you know, bigger monitors, followed by 1366 by 768, standard on laptops. That's not surprising. High DPI and 4K are not commonplace. I think we all knew that. So, nothing unusual about the display. So, how many people are using multiple graphics cards? On a Linux box, why would you use multiple graphics cards? I mean, Windows, because of the gaming and all, maybe, but if you're running Linux, especially Linux exclusively, you're really not going to run multiple graphics cards. And yeah, number of GPUs, 1 is this gigantic bar here, 2 is this really small bar here. Number of monitors, I actually thought this would be a lot different. 1, this giant bar here, 2, yeah, this little bitty bar here, and 3 is just a line, a flat line. I actually run 3. You guys know I run a triple monitor system, but I would think a lot more people would have dual monitors. That seems to be a little more commonplace these days, because pretty much every GPU at least has 2 ports to it and can run 2 monitors. Even like the really old stuff, the really cheap stuff from way back in the day, supports 2 monitors. RAM. Most of this is as to be expected. 4 gigs and 8 gigs is very common. Yeah, Most machines, the most cheap machines now come with 4 gigs of RAM. Most higher end machines come with at least 8 gigs of RAM. That's normal. 1 gig, though, was surprisingly common. You see the green here? That's 1 gig of RAM. What that probably is VMs. Why is that VMs? If I create a VM in VirtualBox, let me pull up a VirtualBox here. So this is VirtualBox. If I decide to create a virtual machine right now, let's say I want to create a VM of Ubuntu. So let me just type a name. Ubuntu. I'm not really going to create this VM, but we're going to go through some of the process. Look, at the default recommended memory size is 1024 megabytes, 1 gig. So if you choose not to change anything here, the default RAM for a VM of Ubuntu is 1 gig. So I'm going to cancel that. All right. Yeah, so 1 gig is slightly less common. 128 gigs is really, really, really not common. So there's like this. That's that one guy. Who was that in the chat that had 128 gigs? That's you right there. That purple line. Right there. And then Ubuntu is used all over the world. You see these circles. The bigger the circle, the higher the concentration of users in that country. You see the gigantic circle around the U.S. So the U.S. has the biggest concentration of Ubuntu users, you know, per capita or whatever. That number is highly skewed, at least regarding the U.S., because the default locale and keyboard layout and all in Ubuntu is English US. So that number is probably higher than it should be for the U.S. But so let's ignore that one. Other countries that Ubuntu seems to be very, very popular in: Brazil, China, Russia, and India. A lot of Ubuntu users. So, and that's pretty much the end of Will Cook's blog post here over at the Ubuntu blog. A first look at the Ubuntu desktop metrics. So, I'm going to head back to the chat for a second. Yeah. And Paul says he games on Linux. Yeah, I game on Linux too because I don't run Windows at all. But if all you live in is Linux, you don't miss Windows games because they don't exist to me. I mean, I don't play them. I've never played them. So if you start out on Windows and then switch to Linux, then you're going to miss some of those games you played on Windows that are Windows only. But if you just live in Windows and have for a number of years, you really, you know, you don't miss anything that's on Windows, just like I don't miss anything that runs only on Mac, you know, because it doesn't even enter my mind, you know. If somebody tells me something's Mac only, okay, well, may as well not exist to me. Same thing with Windows only. Game in Windows VM with pass-through, says Present Arms, yeah. Most of my RAM usage is Chrome. Yes, yes. You can do really lightweight window managers like OpenBox, Fluxbox, i3 that'll boot up in 256 megs of RAM or less, but you cannot open up Chrome or Firefox, view the modern web without needing probably at least a gig of memory, if we're being honest. So, that is the problem. Is yes, you can get some of these Linux distributions to install on very minimal hardware, but you're not going to get the modern web to run very well on minimal hardware. Alright, you can actually run a Windows VM with a second graphics card and get near native performance for gaming, says Renzix. That is interesting there. I'd never considered that, having a Windows VM and giving it like a dedicated graphics card. That is actually really interesting. Let's see. Sleepy, DT, you must be the one with the 128 gigs on that graph. No, like I said, I only have 16. Well, I say only. 16 gigs of RAM is a pretty good bit of RAM, but I would like to bump it up to 32 at some point. I can't ever imagine needing more than 32 gigs of RAM for anything. So the people that actually answered that question and said they, or you know, reported their hardware and they were running 64 gigs or 128 gigs in some cases, wow. Yeah, my Optiplex 980 has 8 gigs. Yep. Yeah, for gaming with PCI pass-through, it comes in handy to have a second graphics card if you have not integrated graphics, such as Ryzen. Okay. Yeah, Mac OS feels bad. I want to put Linux on my old MacBook Pro, but it seems to be more hassle than it's worth. I've never owned a MacBook, but I don't think it's a hassle to put Linux on it. I know a lot of the canonical guys, it's an Ubuntu topic, I know a lot of those guys actually develop on MacBooks, but they run Ubuntu on them. So, but again, I don't know what kind of models they have as far as, you know, how old their MacBooks are. You mentioned you have an old one. I don't know. I'm sure there's folks in the chat right now, though, that probably own MacBooks and maybe could tell you, you know, how compatible the MacBook Pro is with Linux. Paul says, I only have 8 gigs of RAM, but it seems enough. Yeah, 8 gigs is plenty for really everything. Other than when you're getting into things like VMs, then you might want to bump it up a little bit. But yeah, 8 gigs is more than enough for anything you'll ever do on your machine, probably. David says, I only have 16 gigs. Poor you. Of course, poor me, too. I only have 16 gigs, too. I have the original Doom, too, says Paul. Donkey, oh yeah, DT. You don't drink beer today? It's a little early. Still coffee. If I happen to be on later this evening, probably have me a beer. I don't plan on doing anything on my channel, though, this evening, but you never know. Again, I try to keep you guys guessing a little bit on these things. Yeah, I have 16 gigs of RAM here, too, though it was the max amount. But apparently, oh, you thought it was the max amount, but your machine apparently can take up to 32 gigs. Now I feel like the need to upgrade eventually. But here's the problem. 16 gigs is more than enough, really. Unless you really need that 32 gigs. Do you know how much you're going to pay for an additional 16 gigs of RAM? At today's prices, you're going to drop some cash for an additional 16 gigs of RAM. Do you really need it? I don't know. I would have to have a reason to justify that expense, personally. And I kind of do, because I do a lot of virtualization, but still. I remember the first time I saw a computer with 32 megs of RAM. That was back in 1995, says Michael. Wow. That was like the world's fastest supercomputer back in 1995. 32 megs of RAM. Yeah. Yeah, 12 gigs here, yeah. I'll go to 16 gigs someday. You still have 2 empty RAM slots, says Paul. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Guys, what is his work? Programmer? If you're asking about me, I am not a programmer. Amateur programmer. I can do a little, but no, I'm not a programmer at all. I don't claim to be. I'm not any kind of developer. I don't, you know, make software or really do anything Linux related or computer related in real life. I just play one on TV. So my real life job has absolutely nothing to do with Linux or computers or anything we ever talk about here. So I'm just a normal computer desktop nerd, you know. This kind of stuff interests me, so. Let's see, DT, do you play any games other than Ballistic Overkill? Yeah, I've played a few other games live on the channel. I've done a couple of live streams with CSGO. Played 0 AD once or twice on the stream. I've taken a look at Battle of Westnoth, which I really like. That is such a cool game. Yeah, so I've done a few others other than Ballistic Overkill. Ballistic Overkill, you know, we've been playing a little bit of that here lately because so many of the other Linux YouTubers are also playing it. You know, a lot of times we play against each other, sometimes on each other's streams. So, and it's a fun game. Ballistic Overkill's great. For $6, you can't beat it. I paid $5.99 for that game on Steam. It was on sale. I don't know what the regular price is, but if you can catch it on sale for $5.99, I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you like first-person shooters, yeah, pick it up. It's definitely worth $6. I'm not sure, you know, if it's the greatest first-person shooter out there, but for $6, you can't beat it. Let's see, Peter says, DT, this is what Looking Glass and the other tools are all about. Gaming with Windows and a virtual machine. No dual booting anymore. It is really close. We can already do it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the only thing, if you're going to use a VM to game, we just talked about RAM prices. Your machine has to have RAM for that. If your machine only has 4 gigs of RAM, guess what? You're dual booting because the VM's just not going to work. Let's see, do you use Windows machines at work? If you're asking about me, again, I don't do anything with computers in my line of work, so no, I don't use Windows machines. Let's see, DT is probably a civil servant. No. Talking about Windows in this holy Linux place. Yeah. Shame on you. We don't say the W word here in the stream. Now we can talk about Windows or Mac or whatever. I don't run them, so I can't really tell you much about, you know, if you guys ask me questions about Windows 10, I'm not going to be able to answer you, though. But I understand a lot of people that watch my channel. Many of you guys are still running Windows, and I have no problems with that. I know a lot of you guys are curious about Linux. You're thinking about coming over to the Linux side. Come on. We're happy to have you. And it's not scary, so... Yeah, David says he has to go. Alright, bye David. Glad you stopped by. Yeah, you can't get away from Windows in the modern computing world, says Paul. I don't know, I did. About 10 years ago. I've never needed Windows for anything. I mean, I pretty much cut it out. I decided one day, never again, and I've never needed Windows for anything in a decade. Never had a machine with Windows on it. Never needed to find somebody with a machine with Windows on it to do something. Never. Now, depending on your line of work or what you do in school, sometimes you need a Windows machine. If you have to have Windows-only software in some instances, I understand in some people's line of work, they have to run things like Microsoft Office, or they have to use things like Adobe Photoshop. They're not going to run in Linux. They may or may not run in Wine. I don't think Photoshop runs well in Wine, for example. Yeah, so in that instance, you kind of have to have a Windows machine around. For me, though, I don't need any Windows software, so... Never missed anything about Windows. Of course, now it's been so long since I've used Windows, like I don't even know what I would be missing, to be honest. I don't even know what Windows has. So, I don't know what Windows 10 is offering me. So, let's see, I don't run Windows, but I still can't get away from it. Microsoft is just that pervasive, says Paul. Well, yeah, Microsoft is, you know, like a $600 or $700 billion company. Are they pervasive? Yeah, they're everywhere. I mean, they've got their hands on everything. It's a gigantic corporation. I mean, let's see. Linux is not a scary place until you find out about Vim. Yeah, you got to be careful with Vim. So, Vim, :Q to quit, right? :Q. Everybody, all you new Vim users, repeat after me. :Q. Okay. There's a running joke in the Linux world that, you know, a lot of people open Vim and don't know how to exit it and end up having to, like, shut down their computer to exit Vim. One guy, one of the jokes I heard was he reformatted his hard drive and installed a different Linux distribution because he accidentally entered Vim and didn't know how to get out of it. There's a lot of funny Vim jokes about not being able to exit Vim. Yeah, Rex Evans says, Vim is not hard. Can't say the same for Emacs, though. Yeah. Yeah, and then Sanguin says, being forced to use Windows at school sucks. Frowny face. I think the Office monopoly is more important than the Windows monopoly. Yeah. Probably. Yeah. I don't know if Windows really makes all that or Microsoft really makes all that much money off of Windows anymore. I'm sure they make a ton of money off of Office and Office 365 and all those subscriptions for that stuff. Let's see, I am 5 years Windows and cigarette free. Congratulations, men, on both. You made serious gains to your health by quitting smoking, obviously, and probably some serious gains to your health by quitting Windows too. So, Tuck says we have a cute penguin, not a blue screen of death. Yep. Oh yeah, ZZ to quit also works. :Q, :Q. A lot of people are repeating it. :Q. Yeah. LOL. Oh, if you want to write and quit, of course, :Q, W. But of course, I was talking about the people that accidentally enter Vim and then immediately try to exit. Yeah. Because before we even get to :QW, I mean, we would have to tell them how to get into insert mode to even begin writing a document. I for insert mode, by the way. Yeah, Vim is not scary. Ed can be, until you realize that it is a standard editor. Yep. Yeah, :Q, exclamation point. Get it right. Quite a bit of people run into Vim when getting into using Git. Yeah. Quite often it comes up as a surprise. Yeah, there's instances where people get into Vim accidentally. Yeah. I mean, we joke about it, but it does happen. On some Linux distributions, too. They don't have Nano installed by default. So, what's the standard editor? Vim. Nano over Ed. Emacs over Vim. No, okay. We must all admit Emacs is easier to configure than Vim. COTech? I don't know. I've never used Emacs. Late to the chat. Says Lowrider. Yeah. You might have to catch it on the replay. Probably not going to stream too much longer. We've been going about an hour. I don't know. Yeah, kill all -9 Vim. Yeah. What happens if you get into Vim, though, in a TTY prompt? What if you're not even in a graphical environment? Yeah. I guess you could switch to a different TTY and kill Vim from there. Yeah, SpaceMax is where it's at. They still make a lot of monies off of Windows. It's just slowing down. Yeah, the PC market, it's not where it's at anymore. That's not where the money's at. The money these days, much like the Linux companies, Red Hat, Canonical, SUSE, they figured it out. Amazon, the server market's where it's at. The cloud, IoT. I mean, that kind of stuff is really where you're going to make your money. You're not making your money in PC desktop sales. Alright. Yeah, who uses a TTY without tmux, though? You guys like your terminal multiplexers, huh? If you like that kind of stuff, try a tiling window manager, because if you tile your windows, you really don't need something like tmux or screen. Because there's no reason to, split your terminal into tiles if you're already using a tiling window manager. Just something to consider. Let's see, Genie is a good IDE. Yeah, I love Genie. Sublime Text is an open source, but in my opinion is a great editor, says Sanguine. Never used Sublime. Although I've used that clone of Sublime that GitHub makes, Atom. That thing is slow as molasses in January. Yeah, ooh, tmux. Yeah, Donkey apparently doesn't like tmux. Ooh, tmux. Paul says the PC is dead. Donkey says use ST. Yeah, the simple terminal. That's hardcore. Lowrider on 2 gigs of RAM on my old netbook, still enjoying the stream. And able to respond. Yep. Tiling Windows. i3. Yeah, i3 is awesome. tmux is not only for splitting, you can leave that session and continue via SSH, for example. Okay. DWM. i3 autistic. You know what? I haven't tried DWM, so I can't comment on DWM, but I will take a look at it on the channel at some point. Yes, SpaceMax over Sublime, over NeoVim, over everything else. DT, what do you think about Quake? The drop-down terminal, is that the one you hit F12 and it drops down? It's fine. I don't use it, never used it. I'm taking a look at it because it's installed by default on some Linux distributions. It seems fine. I don't really get into the whole terminal as far as a favorite one. Do you have the shell? Can you type some shell commands in it? If you can, then they're all good. So let's see. Atom is an Electron app. That's why it's slow. Yeah. Every Electron app I've ever tried takes like 10-15 seconds to open up. It is crazy how slow those things are. And Electron seems to be becoming more and more popular. You're getting a lot more of these things, and man, it's just bloated and slow, and it's a mess. Otherwise, Atom is probably an excellent IDE, but man, I wish they would have done something other than an Electron app. Paul says URXVT. Yeah, that's what I'm currently using for my terminal. I love URXVT. It's not perfect. No terminal emulator is, though, but they all work. I like Termite. Used Termite a lot in the past. Even Xterm. I don't mind Xterm. If I'm running a full desktop environment like GNOME or KDE, I run their terminals. Yeah, VS Code is also an Electron app. Never used VS Code. I use Vim for my go-to editor for dev stuff. Yeah, Peter says Sakura, Cornshell, Tmux, Ed. Wow. You guys are some pretty big nerds here. I mean, some of the programs you guys use, ST and Tmux and Vim. This is not your typical Linux desktop group right here. Let's see. DT, I know that you probably never will review Mac OS, but there are some guides to install the latest version of it on VirtualBox. I think it would be interesting to know your opinion about it. I won't rule it out. I did install Windows 10 in a VM and reviewed it on the channel. And, that's something I never would have considered initially, but I'm glad I did it. Yeah, maybe I'll take a look at Mac OS at some point. They are rewriting Atom in Rust. Okay. I think that's an excellent choice. Xterm with Tmux, yeah. Alright, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream. It was fun. Of course, I'll do a quick recap for those that are just joining us here at the end. So the first look at Ubuntu's desktop metrics. Some of the interesting things about this was the opt-in rate. 2/3 of people that installed Ubuntu opted in to send Ubuntu Canonical information about their system. 67%. That's not unusual because it's ticked on by default. Fresh installs versus upgrades. Only about a quarter of the people that installed 1804 did so through an upgrade. Most people did a fresh install. That's not surprising either because the people that are still running 1604 haven't been offered a chance to upgrade yet. CPU count, most people are only using a single CPU. That's not surprising at all. Very few people out there have dual CPU machines. Partition schemes. Now this was interesting. Only about 50% of the people that install Ubuntu choose the automatic partitioning. 22% of you manually partition your drive. Very cool. Let's see. Install alongside, so you dual booters, 8% of you. Erase existing and reinstall, 8% of you. And then about 8% of you did some kind of LVM. And Ansem in the chat. Super chat. Appreciate that, Ansem. Sincerely. You guys are awesome. You guys really help support the channel. Yeah, Mr. Elf says, shout out to Ansem. Yes. And a matter of fact, Ansem, for the super chat, if you got a question you would like answered, feel free to ask it before we close the stream here this evening. Display. The most common display is 1080p, followed by 1366 by 768. two very common screen resolutions. The most common desktop resolution, 1080. The most common laptop resolution, 1366 by 768. Not a shock there. High DPI and 4K are not commonplace at all. That's not a shock. RAM usage, 4 gigs and 8 gigs is the most common. Again, not a shock. 1 gig was actually pretty highly represented, and that is for VMs, probably. Because I showed you guys in VirtualBox what's the default RAM size for an Ubuntu VM? 1 gig of RAM. Alright, and then Ubuntu is used pretty much everywhere in the world. There was an unusually high concentration of Ubuntu users in the US, but that is because the default locale in the Ubuntu installer is the US, so I would ignore that, but judging by everybody else in the world, the most popular places for Ubuntu are Brazil, India, China, Russia. Anyway, some interesting stats. I certainly find that stuff interesting, and I hope you know, they use all the information they got about our CPUs and GPUs, everybody that participated in this. I hope we get better drivers out of this thing. I really do, because we could use them. Alright, so I'm going to just quickly take a look at a couple more questions in the chat, and I've got to get out of here. Let's see. DT, do you consider to trade in OpenBox for i3? Well, I'm not currently running OpenBox. I'm currently in Qtile, another tiling window manager. Could I switch to i3 from Qtile? I could, but I'd have to write a i3 config, you know, and set it up exactly the way I want it. I have Qtile set up the way I want it. I have Xmonad also set up the way I want it. But could I run i3 and live happily ever after in it? Absolutely. Probably any tiling window manager. They all kind of function the same way. And of course, you guys know I love OpenBox. For a floating window manager, OpenBox is awesome. Yeah, Donkey says, slow clap to Ansem. Yeah, appreciate you, Ansem. And earlier in the chat, Horace, you guys really helps out on some of this stuff. Speaking of which, you guys that have donated to the channel, you know, I bought my $165 all expenses, what I put into it, ThinkPad the other day, my Lenovo ThinkPad. I also, I think I spent about 60 bucks on this CanaKit Raspberry Pi. I just got this in. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with it. I'm sure I'll do something with it on the channel, but this Raspberry Pi. I've already installed Raspbian on it, so. But as far as what I'm going to do with it, I'm not sure. But, you know, these are the kinds of things, you know, I want to do some Raspberry Pi content on the channel. And you guys really help out with this kind of stuff. And, of course, the most important thing that your contributions have really helped with this week was Vegemite. Vegemite. Which I ate a little bit of Vegemite live on one of Toss's streams the other day, Total OS Today. I'm also going to eat some Vegemite on Big Daddy's podcast this Saturday night, I think. It's not that bad. It's not great. I got to be honest, it's not the best thing I've ever eaten, but it's not bad. All right. Yes. Everybody's applauding Ansem. Yeah, Ansem. Great. No question. Yep. No question from Ansem. He says he's just helping out. Okay. Alright, and then we got some goodbyes. Yep. I'm going to kill the stream now. So, DT, are you still active on Discord? The server's pretty dead. Yeah, I mean, I check in there maybe once a week. But I really, here lately, I've used Discord to chat live on my video game streams. Like when I've done these Ballistic Overkill streams, you know, I'll join the voice channel on my channel. But no, I don't hang out on Discord. I don't spend a lot of time at this computer. I work a lot. I'm actually not sitting at this computer for the most part, other than when I do these streams and do stuff for the channel. So I don't have Discord open because I'm not here. And I don't work with computers, so at work I'm not at a computer or anything. So I really don't have time to interact with you guys, unfortunately, the way I'm sure you guys would like to and the way I would like to. I wish I did. Maybe in the future I'll have more time to dedicate to all of this. That's the goal anyway. Eventually, you know, work a little less at my other jobs and maybe put more time into this job here. Because this job, quite frankly, is it's a more enjoyable job than the one I currently work. Let's see. Donkey. Holy smokes. Ben says Media Center. Media Center? Okay, Raspberry Pi. Okay, yeah. So that's what the Holy Smokes was about with my new Pi. Ben wants a Media Center. We could do that. Small server. Yep. I had one guy request maybe I could set that up as like a local web server. You know, just to develop some stuff on localhost. Maybe set up, you know, Apache or whatever, Nginx on it. Not sure if I want to do that on a Pi. Maybe, though. Of course, a lot of people like to do, you know, gaming, you know, the old ROMs. I wouldn't mind doing it like a media center, though, or, I don't know. I'll come up with something interesting on it. I'm going to think on it probably a couple of weeks. I'm, you know, right now, like I said, I installed Raspbian on it. You know, it took like 10 minutes to install Raspbian, and then I put it back in the box and really haven't played with it at all. Because I'm going to give it some thought as far as what I want to do with it. Yeah, Discord equals bad privacy. Yeah. I mean, it's not free and open source software either, but you know what? Discord works, especially for the gaming stuff. If you're going to chat live in-game with somebody, you know, you kind of need to use Discord, unfortunately. But you know what? I don't mind Discord as a product. It works. I mean, it's actually a nice platform. Yeah, Raspberry Pi works amazing as home surveillance server. Okay. Yeah, set RetroPie for retro gaming. Yeah, that's a lot of people have asked me about that. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream now. I do want to thank all you guys that are still hanging out here. Let's see who's still left. Omega God, Ben, Big Pod, Donkey, Deepstream, Dorian, Harish, Lowrider, Matthias, Michelle, Mr. F, Paul, both Pauls, Peter, Renzik, Ron, Tux, all you guys. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with me this evening. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Before I go, I do need to give a special thanks to all my patrons, all my Patreon supporters. David, Carlos, Nick, Daniel, Brian, Leor, AK, Ron, Keith, Dan, Michael, Tony, Bruno, David, Mike, Silvio, Omar, Mark, Mr. Neely Pops, John, Carl, Greg, Rob, Matt, Christian, Tiedemann, Stephen Z, Eduardo, Alex, Jake, Benjamin, Stephen B, Marcus, Interceptor, Tubella, Humade, First Paul, Second Paul, Chuck, Ben, John, and Swami. You guys rock. You guys help make this show possible. Peace, guys.